The Lewis and Clark expedition was one of the most perilous and exciting adventures of all time. It was a journey across the plains, across water, and through mountains. Led by Meriwether Lewis, the expedition across the Louisiana Territory shone light on new animals and plants. Let's take a look at one of the most famous explorers of all time, Meriwether Lewis.
We are pioneers and trailblazers. We fight for freedom. We transform our dreams into the truth. We become a nation.
Meriwether Lewis, he was well educated and had abstract ideas. He was moody and refined.
Born in Virginia on August 18, 1774, Meriwether Lewis lived near Charlottesville, neighbor to Thomas Jefferson. Meriwether Lewis had one sister and one brother. He was an outside type of person and loved to explore. Meriwether Lewis was the son of Lucy and William Lewis.
Meriwether Lewis's father, William Lewis, was born in 1733 and died in 1779 when Meriwether was only 5. So the thing is, he left behind some 1,000 acres of land, and according to the Anglo-Saxon tradition, Meriwether Lewis was the older boy, even though he was born second, so he got to inherit all that land.
Lucy Lewis, Meriwether's mother, was widowed at only 27.
Lucy Lewis did a sensible thing and married a Virginian named Captain John Marks.
John Marks moved to a new colony being developed by General John Matthews on Broad River, Georgia.
Naturally, Lewis loved the new, raw environment which was inland of Georgia. Meriwether felt he was old enough, which was only 13 or 14. He moved back to Albemarle, his birthplace, to manage his father's property with the help of a few uncles.
Most of the time, schooling was given in tutorials by local pastors. Meriwether Lewis's first teacher was a man named Pastor Matthew Murray, who taught him from 1789 to 1790 in a crude log house on the lawn of Edgeworth Farm. He was a decent man and a good teacher, but Dr. Charles Everett, who is Meriwether Lewis's second teacher, greatly contrasted with him.
Dr. Charles Everett, ooh, he was ill-tempered. Good thing he died.
James Waddell, Lewis's third teacher, was a bit more gentle-humored.
Lewis came into the life of being a... Lewis later was asked to be Jefferson's personal secretary aide.
Thomas Jefferson was one of many men who sought to colonize and explore the West, and to discover the Northwest Passage, which was said to connect the Pacific Ocean to settled parts of the North American continent.
After the failure of the 1766 expedition with Major Robert Rogers and companion Jonathan Carver, who made it no further west than Minnesota, Jefferson then went to George Roger Clark. Clark denied, saying he couldn't afford the command. So sad.
But Thomas Jefferson didn't give up. With a sense of what Americans will later call manifest destiny, he envisioned Americans populating the entire Louisiana Territory.
After his plans misfired and potential captains ran out, Jefferson knew exactly the man. And you guessed it, Meriwether Lewis.
In the spring of 1803, Meriwether became the leader of the expedition, and he wanted his childhood friend, William Clark, to join him.
Even though Lewis and Clark were totally different, they hardly had any disputes.
However, William Clark was pretty opposite. He was even-tempered and, I would say, practically the man of action type.
Clark was 4 years older than Lewis, but yet they were good friends. Clark was also born in Virginia, and he had military experience because he joined the army at the age of 19.
William Clark was a great map maker and an even better leader, and that's exactly what the expedition needed.
On May 14, 1804, the expedition into the West truly began. During Lewis and Clark's journey, they met many Native Americans. The Yankton Sioux were one of the many tribes they met. When they were offered gifts, the Yankton Sioux were disappointed. However, they brushed it off. They warned that another tribe, the Teton, would not be so friendly.
Of course, the Yankton were right. The Teton were disgusted. They demanded a boat. The Lewis and Clark party barely managed to avoid a fight, and they were still not in good relationships with the Sioux.
October 1st through December 20th, 1804. Winter was here. Lewis and Clark planned to stay at the Mandan tribe's village. Temperatures were below 0 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 18 degrees Celsius. The food was dwindling. They needed meat.
They met Charbonneau and his wife, Sacagawea, while they were with the Mandan.
Lewis and Clark wrote about 108 botanical species and 68 mineral species. That's quite an achievement. Then it was time to move out. Now this is where the real adventure begins.
During the trip, Lewis and Clark encountered the beast that terrorized many explorers, the grizzly bear.
They wounded one of the bears, but the other charged at Lewis, chasing him 80 yards before they killed it.
Lewis encountered a fork in the river. Him and 3 men went down the southern branch to find the Great Falls.
Lewis rejoined Clark on June 16th, and 6 days later, the portage began.
Sacagawea proved to be a big help.
Sacagawea was only 15 years old when she joined the expedition, and at that time, she just had her first child.
On May 14, 1805, Sacagawea rescued items that had fallen out of a capsized boat, which included journals, drawings, and records.
I think that Sacagawea was incredibly brave and strong, and I honor her for that.
Sacagawea is my inspiration.
Sacagawea was probably one of the bravest women in all of American history. Without her help, we would never explored the route to the Pacific Ocean.
The Lewis and Clark party were faced with probably the hardest part of their journey yet, the Rocky Mountains.
The Rocky Mountains made travel slow and at worsened conditions. The party had to eat tallow candles to survive.
The expedition was successful, and Lewis and Clark were hailed as heroes. Only 1 man died during the whole trip.
Sergeant Charles Floyd died in Iowa. He was the only man to die on the journey, and when he was on his deathbed, he asked Clark to go write him a letter. But before Clark could get any ink and paper to document it, Floyd died.
After he died, Lewis ordered his men to elect a new sergeant. This was the first American election in the far west. Patrick Goss won with 19 votes, followed by Bratton and Gibson.